As promised in part 1, part 2 is here. I have often written that the most important thing in anybody's actions are the intentions behind that action. And so it stands to reason that the biggest question about a possible, God forbid, Atiku presidency is the why. Why is he running for office? Is it because he cares genuinely about I? You find that out today. There are links up there, one to my blog and one to the YouTube channel. So you can go see some of these things for yourself. Like I said many times before, I have evidences that can rock this nation, but out of respect for national security.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the African Wahala. Thank you for joining me this morning. On this platform, we talk about our issues on the continent of Africa, why we are where we are, and what we need to do to go forward. Now, the topic of this conversation is about the United States government, and there another fake promise about placing a visa ban on corrupt Nigerian politicians, people that choose to engage in electoral violence, rigging, and all that kind of stuff. Because the Nigerian elections are coming up, and it is usually plagued with all types of violence. So, according to this article that I came across, the United States government says we are marking Nigerian politicians to get visa ban for election violence, rigging, according to the US government. It says here the visa restrictions announced today are specific to certain individuals and not directed at the Nigerian people or the government of Nigeria. Now, we need to understand that it's the US government, and we need to be able to separate the US government from its people. The US government is lying to Nigerians about placing a visa ban on corrupt officials. And the reason why I say it's a lie is clear to see. It's important we have this conversation because a lot of us, so called Nigerians, we love waiting for the international community to intervene in our issues, to help us punish the corrupt politicians that have put us in this mess. We are always waiting for the international community, and they know that we are waiting for them. So they make up these fake promises to keep our hopes alive, but it's all fake promises. If the United States government really did care about placing a visa ban on corrupt officials, what do you think it should have done when it came to the US Africa Summit that recently took place in December of 2022? Now, the US Africa Summit was a show of ridiculousness and was a show of the hypocrisy of the United States government. I'm not talking of the United States people, but the government. If the government claims that we want to spread our democratic principles across the world, including the continent of Africa, different countries, and we are also going to place a visa ban on corrupt officials that pertain in electoral rigging during electoral processes, then how come the United States government invited nothing but corrupt people to the conference? The US Africa Summit that took place last month was filled up of individuals like, if you look to the right here, on the right of this screen, this is a photo of African leaders and the United States president in the middle. These 50-something African leaders traveled all the way to the United States to meet up with the American president and some US government officials. These African politicians traveled along with their personal assistants, some ministers. They traveled with an entourage, and that cost a lot of money. But what I don't understand is how come all these guys traveled that far, spending all that money to go meet up with less than 20 people? Wouldn't it have made more sense if those 20 people traveled all the way to Africa, maybe somewhere in Ethiopia where the African Union is situated, and met with the African politicians? But that's me just digressing. I'm just trying to be logical. Coming back to this photo, if you look at these guys, the first guy at the bottom right corner, this is the president of Gabon. He goes by the name Ali Bongo. Now, a lot of you guys might not know who Ali Bongo is, but he is one of the most corrupt politicians in the entire world. He has been the president of Gabon for about 15 years, thereabout. He took over power from his father. Right now, Ali Bongo is physically incapable of being a president of a country. He is mentally unstable. He can't be the president. He's a young guy. He fell sick at some point. He had a stroke, I believe in 2017, but he refused to step down from power, even though he doesn't have what it takes to rule Gabon. Majority of Gabonese citizens are living in poverty. And just so you know, Gabon is an oil-rich country. It's situated in Central Africa area, close to Equatorial Guinea, Congo, Cameroon. It's around that area. It's an oil-rich country. It has a small population, 2 million people, extremely poor people, all thanks to their criminal politician, Ali Bongo. I'm going to share a quick video of Ali Bongo with you to understand, so you can clearly understand what I'm saying. And that's the president of Gabon. Clearly not physically okay. Listen, sometimes when people are in wheelchairs or they have some sort of physical disabilities, it doesn't mean they don't have the capacity to be leaders. We've seen leaders in the past. There was an American president on the wheelchair. While he was on the wheelchair, there was a major war going on in the US. I can't remember the guy's name. And he was able to resolve lots of the problems in that country. So it's not necessarily about you being physically fit that makes it possible to be a president. But if you're not physically fit and you're completely failing at the leadership of your country or whatever structure you're in, then you're not supposed to be there, especially when you force yourself to remain in that position. And that's the case with Ali Bongo. But how come the United States government that claims they are going to be placing a visa ban on corrupt politicians, how come they did not place a visa ban on Ali Bongo? He was right there with Joe Biden. Look, this is the photo once again. This is Joe Biden in the middle, the president of the United States, and this is Ali Bongo. That is one example of corrupt politicians that have partook in election violence and rigging, because according to the United States government, they are going to place a visa ban on Nigerian politicians that partake in election violence and rigging. Listen, we all know that when it comes to election season in Nigeria, okay, it's a time for war. People always die, okay, because you're going to find corrupt politicians that have stolen the people's money. They will use that money to pay street urchins that have been created as a result of the unemployment and the hopelessness in the country. They would use that money to pay those street urchins to create problems. Now, those street urchins are going to kill people, The corrupt politicians are going to be talking about, oh, this guy is from my religion. Make sure you vote for these people. Make sure you vote for me because I'm from your religion. Make sure you vote for me because I'm from your ethnic group. And then you're going to find people are killing people based on religious reasons and ethnic reasons. It happens all the time. That's how we are, period. Hopefully that changes with time, but that's how we currently are. So the politicians that incite this situation, according to the US government, they are going to place a visa ban on them. But how come the same situation that I just described, that goes on in many African countries, by the way, not just in Nigeria, you have the United States government, their president, taking pictures as recent as December 2022 with, if this is the United States president, do you guys know who this is? This is Buhari, the Nigerian president. Buhari in 2011, he single-handedly incited an ethno-religious violence that led to the death of over 400 people in Nigeria. Let me tell you something. When Buhari failed in 2011 elections, 400 people were killed. About 11 youth corpers were killed in Bauchi State. I was a youth corper back then, and I remember youth corpers from my batch B 2010 batch B set. We lost 11 people to that electoral violence because when Buhari lost to Jonathan, the extremist terrorists from that area, they claimed that Jonathan is an infidel and they don't want an infidel to win over a Muslim. And for that reason, they started attacking corpers. They went to the corpers lounge. They killed 11 of them. They burnt them alive. That happened. In 2015, there was a lot of electoral violence. Buhari incited that stuff. That happened. How come the United States government did not place a visa ban on Buhari? Since the United States government claims that we are marking Nigerian politicians, according to them, we are marking Nigerian politicians to get visa ban for election violence and rigging. In 2019 elections, Buhari was engaged in electoral rigging and electoral violence. He is in the same photo as Joe Biden, the president of the US. So that is another evidence for you to know that the US is lying. I'll give you one more evidence, because this picture right here, it says 1,000 words. This individual hiding at this corner, I don't know if you can see my screen where my mouse is hovering over. That is the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni. He is a thug. Yoweri Museveni has been the president of Uganda for 36 years, going to 37 years now. He has completely destroyed the economy of the country. He is a billionaire. Himself, his children, his family members, and their friends. He has consistently partook in electoral violence and rigging for 37 years. But he is seen in this photo with the president of the United States of America, Joe Biden. And the United States government released information a couple of days ago telling Nigerians that, listen, your upcoming elections, any politician that partakes in election violence or rigging will be banned from coming to the United States. So do you guys truly believe the US gives a damn about your politicians if they are corrupt or if they partake in violence or rigging? They don't. There are many other guys in this photo. Look at this one. This is Paul Biya. This guy at this bottom left corner is Paul Biya, the president of Cameroon. This is a joke right here. Paul Biya has been the president for 42 years. 42 years in power, consistently partook in electoral rigging, violence. Right now, there is the Amazonian war going on in Cameroon since 2016. Lots of people have lost their lives. Tons of people are complaining about being marginalized. Ethnic groups are complaining about being marginalized in Cameroon. But this guy, Paul Biya, old, demented, does not have the physical or mental capacity to rule over a nation and move the nation forward. He has completely failed. He is supposed to be in prison in a normal country, but because it's a country like Cameroon, he gets to be a free man. Not only that, he gets to take photos with Joe Biden, the president of the US, the same United States government that came up with an article telling us that, listen, if any politician partakes in election violence, we are going to ban them from the US. And listen, it's ridiculous, right? Because it's a slap on the face of these politicians. I know they don't have shame, these African politicians. They have no shame. These guys are they are a disgrace, period. Another country is threatening you with a visa ban. Oh, we're going to ban you. You're not going to come to our country if you do this. Because they're like big brother, they're like father, they're like your big brother, and you guys love being in that position of being their sons. I'm talking about the African politicians. Because if you have pride, if you have self-dignity and integrity, you as the leader of a country should not even be begging for the visa of another country in the first place. But in Nigeria and many other African countries, these corrupt politicians, they rely on countries like the United States because that's where they get their medical benefits. That's where they go for their hospital treatments. That's where their children go to universities and get quality education. Because in their own countries, they have nothing. They have created nothing. They have impoverished the people. They've destroyed all the amenities and they've left to the United States and other good countries. So when the United States come back and says, we are going to ban you, they come back and threaten these disgraceful politicians. Then the politicians start shaking to their boots. But the most important thing is the United States is also lying. They are not the United States government, not the people. Differentiate. They are lying about placing a ban on corrupt African politicians because clearly they love corrupt African politicians. Clearly. Okay. So with all of that being said, yeah, before I go into that, I'm going to show you a quick video on Paul Biya to prove to you why the guy is absolutely incompetent. Okay, I'm not having too much good luck with these videos today. It's not loading, but pretty much that video shows the president of Cameroon completely lost in that same US-Africa summit. The guy is sitting down in the podium about to give a speech, but he completely forgot where he was. He didn't even know he was in front of a crowd about to listen to him. He had a personal assistant coming to tell him that, man, you're about to give a speech. How about you just give that speech? Oh, these people are listening to you. And he was like, who are these people? Am I a celebrity? They said, no, you are in the middle of a speech. The president of Rwanda just gave his own speech. It's your turn to speak. And the guy is confused. He has no clue where he is because he's old, he's sick, he's demented. I'm talking about Paul Biya, the president of Cameroon. And right now in Nigeria, we have a bunch of criminals that are about to take over, that are also sick, demented, and rely on the institutions abroad in the US. I'm talking about Tinubu and Atiku. Tinubu and Atiku Abubakar, these two guys, they are also trying their best, their possible best, to get into power in Nigeria simply because it gives them that immunity. It's not about stealing money for these guys because they've already stolen so much money over the decades. These guys are billionaires off armed robbery. If you understand what I'm saying, you can become a billionaire by stealing and stealing and stealing and stealing and stealing. Nigeria is the evidence because once you get into the Nigerian political space and you become a thief, because once you become a politician in Nigeria, 99% of the time you're going to be a thief. And then once you become a thief, you can be protected. You have no worries, and you will become a billionaire. And that's how Atiku Abubakar and Tinubu became billionaires today. And they are also, they stand a great chance at becoming the president of Nigeria, an extremely sick country. And then the United States government comes out and says, we are going to place a visa ban on corrupt Nigerian politicians or any politician that partakes in election violence and rigging. But I want you to know today, people, do not believe them, okay? The United States is not coming to save you. The United States government believes in African corrupt politicians because they are their puppets. They use those corrupt politicians to keep us in constant chaos so they can have access to what they need from us. And that's all that is. So when the US comes out and says, we're going to place a visa ban on corrupt politicians, stop wasting your time believing that they will. They are not going to do that, okay? And the evidence is right there. The proof is in the pudding. I shared photos earlier of the United States President Joe Biden taking photos with individuals like Paul Biya of Cameroon, a sick, demented, perpetually rigging elections individual. Same thing as Yoweri Museveni, the president of Uganda, an old guy that has been the president for 37 years, rigging elections, killing people in the process. That's Museveni. The third guy, Buhari, the president of Nigeria, he has partaken in electoral violence and rigging. At the same time, he has even plotted a coup and overthrew a democratically elected government. That's Buhari. But the same Joe Biden, the head of the United States government, is taking photos with him. Another guy in that photo, Ali Bongo Odima of Gabon. Gabon is supposed to be doing extremely well. Small population, 2 million people, oil-rich country. But the people are poor. Why? Because Ali Bongo Odima and his father, they both have been in power in that country for maybe 50-something years. They are billionaires because they have access to the money. Then they take photos with the president of the United States government, the same United States government that claims that we are trying to spread our democratic principles all around the world, especially the continent of Africa. We are trying to democratize Africa, and we are trying to rid African democratic system of violence and rigging. But in the same breath, the president of the United States is taking photos with the king riggers of elections and the most violent individuals when it comes to elections in Africa. So please don't wait for the United States government or anybody, any imperialists from China, from Europe, from anywhere else to tell you that, oh, we are coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves, okay? And right now, we are doing what we can. Different groups are doing different things that they think they can do to get all of us out of this mess, the perpetual state of confusion we find ourselves in, especially as Nigerian people. We know where we are. We are in an extremely terrible place at this point, right? So don't wait for anybody to make false promises to you. The same way during End SARS campaign, a lot of us were complaining, oh, we have to petition the United Nations, we have to petition the multiple international organizations about the crimes going on. All the petitions that we petitioned, it led to nothing. And I'm not saying that we should stop doing those petitions. It's important. Everybody needs to contribute any way that they can to end this mess that we find ourselves in. But don't rely on them to come and save us. And that's the end of my broadcast this morning. Thank you for joining me on the African Wahala. I had to come through and make a quick broadcast, have this conversation with my people. If you like this content, click on the like button, subscribe to the channel. Peace, blessings, and have a great one.